The Tin Can Kids, November 3rd, 1946. 0720 hours. Dagenham, Essex, England. 7-year-old Margaret Thompson pressed her palm against the corrugated metal wall of her bedroom. Cold. Always cold. The aluminum rippled under her touch, thin as a biscuit tin, separating her from the November wind outside. Through the curved ceiling above her narrow bed, she could hear rain drumming. Not the soft patter on slate tiles she remembered from before the war, but a harsh metallic tattoo that turned the entire structure into a resonating drum. Her father called it a prefab. Her mother called it temporary. The neighbours called Margaret and the other children growing up in these structures something else entirely. The Tin Can Kids. They weren't supposed to be there for long. Britain, autumn 1945. The war was over, but victory had left the nation's cities in ruins. German bombs had destroyed or damaged 4 million homes. Another 100,000 had been requisitioned for military use and left deteriorating. Families doubled up in single rooms. Others squatted in abandoned buildings. Still others lived in tube stations, unwilling or unable to leave the underground shelters that had protected them during the Blitz. The housing crisis wasn't just severe, it was catastrophic. Winston Churchill's government faced a choice: build traditional brick homes that would take years to complete, or deploy something faster, cheaper, more immediate. They chose speed. In July 1944, even before the war ended, the Ministry of Works began manufacturing what they called the British Temporary Housing Programme, factory-produced homes, prefabricated structures designed to last 10 years, just long enough, they reasoned, for proper reconstruction to catch up. The first prefabs arrived in convoy. Flatbed trucks carried walls, roofs, bathroom fixtures, even kitchen appliances, all manufactured in converted aircraft factories. What had built Spitfires and Wellingtons now stamped out aluminium cladding and steel frames. Within 48 hours, a crew could assemble a complete dwelling on a concrete foundation. By 1948, Britain had erected 156,623 prefabs across the kingdom. 100,000 children would grow up inside them. Margaret's prefab sat in a neat row with 57 others, arranged like military barracks across what had been a sports field in Dagenham. Each unit measured 32 feet by 24 feet. Single story. 2 bedrooms, living room, kitchen, bathroom. The exterior, curved corrugated aluminium painted in government-issue cream or occasionally pale green. The walls, aluminium sheeting over timber framing with a thin layer of insulation that did almost nothing against British winter. The design had come from aircraft construction techniques. Light, portable, mass-producible. Engineers had optimized for speed of assembly, not comfort, not longevity. Inside, the prefabs were surprisingly modern. Each came equipped with a gas-fired water heater, luxury for working-class families accustomed to heating kettles on coal stoves. A fitted kitchen with built-in cupboards. An electric refrigerator, something Margaret's grandmother had never seen in her life. A proper indoor bathroom with a toilet and bath. Revolutionary for families who'd shared outdoor privies with 6 neighbours. But the walls remained thin. Sound travelled. On winter mornings, condensation ran down the inside of the metal panels in silver rivulets, pooling on windowsills. In summer, the structures became ovens, the metal skin absorbing heat until evening. The children who lived there learned to navigate these extremes. Extra blankets in winter, windows open wide in July. The constant awareness that their homes were fundamentally different from the brick terraces where their friends lived. Different, temporary, tin cans. The prefab estates developed their own culture. In Dagenham, in Birmingham, in Manchester and Glasgow and Cardiff, clusters of aluminum homes created instant neighbourhoods. Families moved in within weeks of each other. Nobody had history there. Nobody had roots. This created a strange equality. The shipyard workers' family, next to the Clark's family, next to the widow on pension. All equally displaced, all equally temporary. The children formed bonds quickly. Margaret played with Susan from 3 doors down and Robert from across the way. They understood things other children didn't. How to tell when your father was coming home by the metallic echo of footsteps on the concrete path. How to identify which prefab was yours in the dark by counting rows. How to jam newspapers into gaps around windows when winter winds found every seam. They developed games, unique to their environment. Racing between the aluminium walls, the metal amplifying every shout into ringing chaos. Creating secret meeting spots in the narrow alleys between units. Using the curved roofs as echo chambers, whispering at one end and hearing your voice carry impossibly far. Other children, the ones from proper houses, called them tin can kids, sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with cruelty. The name stuck because it captured something essential about their existence, that sense of being packaged, temporary, ready to be opened and disposed of when no longer needed. Margaret's mother tried to make their prefab feel permanent. Curtains in the windows, a small garden plot where grass had been encouraged to grow on the clay-packed ground, family photographs on the thin walls, attached carefully to avoid puncturing the metal skin. But nothing could disguise the fundamental nature of the structure. It hummed in high winds. It pinged as the metal expanded and contracted with temperature changes. It felt, always, like something waiting. 10 years, they'd said. By 1955, everyone would move to proper homes. 1955 came and went. The prefabs remained. Families stayed. Children grew. The temporary became semi-permanent, became simply life. Margaret turned 16 in that prefab, brought boyfriends home to meet her parents in that cramped living room where conversation from the kitchen could be heard word for word through the thin partition. Got her first job at a textile factory and saved her wages in a tin box kept under her bed. The structures aged poorly. By the late 1950s, rust bloomed at seams where rainwater had found its way past seals. Aluminum panels buckled, the insulation, never adequate, compressed and deteriorated. Repairs became constant, a patch here, a seal there. Families learned to maintain their prefabs like boats, constant vigilance against deterioration, knowing that neglect meant rapid decline. The government issued statements. New housing developments were underway. Traditional brick homes, council estates. The prefab residents would be relocated soon. The structures would be demolished. Just a bit longer. The children became teenagers. The teenagers became young adults. Some left for university, for the military, for marriage. Others stayed, unable to afford anything else. The prefab estates remained inhabited, not because anyone wanted to be there, but because alternatives didn't materialize fast enough. Margaret met John in 1959. He'd grown up in a prefab estate in Birmingham, different city, identical aluminium home. They recognized something in each other, that particular understanding of cold metal walls and echoing rooms. They married in 1961 and moved into a brick flat in London. Proper walls, solid, silent. Margaret touched them sometimes, marveling at the thickness, the stability, the way they held warmth. But she never forgot the sound of rain on aluminium, the way morning light filtered through condensation on metal panels, the exact resonance of footsteps approaching home. By 1970, most prefabs had been demolished. 25 years after they were erected as temporary housing, they'd finally reached the end of their intended lifespan twice over. Crews dismantled them in reverse order from their construction. Roofs first, then walls, then fixtures. What had taken 48 hours to build took 6 hours to reduce to scrap. Some prefabs survived, in remote areas, in communities that fought demolition. A few thousand remained scattered across Britain, modified, reinforced, made permanent through sheer necessity and inhabitant determination. They stand today, 75 years after construction, monuments to a crisis that demanded immediate solutions, and to the families who made temporary homes permanent through simple occupation. The children who grew up in them are elderly now. They gather occasionally, these tin can kids, at reunions and historical society meetings. They share stories that sound absurd to younger listeners. Living in aluminium aircraft shells, homes that resonated like drums, condensation pooling on bedroom floors, 10 years stretching to 25. Margaret is 94 now. She lives in a proper house in Sussex, brick walls thick as her forearm, but she remembers. November mornings pressing her palm to cold aluminium, the metallic echo of rain, the strange intimacy of those prefab estates where every family's life bled through thin walls into their neighbour's consciousness, the sense of being temporary in a world slowly rebuilding itself around them. The tin can kids. 100,000 British children who came of age in structures never meant to last, in homes that were supposed to be footnotes but became formative. They learned resilience from aluminum walls, community from shared displacement, patience from waiting for permanence that took decades to arrive. Their homes are gone now, scrapped, recycled, forgotten by official histories, but the children who grew up in them remain, carrying memories of a peculiar British experiment, when a nation's housing crisis was solved with converted aircraft factories and aluminium sheeting, and when temporary meant growing up entirely, waiting for real life to begin in a proper house with proper walls that didn't sing in the rain.